The Epicureans, a novel by Charles McNair. Chapter 1. The Black Forest. A pretty postcard. Snow settles over the black forest. The dark trees put on robes, arms raised like obedient children. Their sleeves slowly whiten. Here's a stone cottage, hidden away from any traveler. In the derelict, ice-glazed front garden, a weathered wooden statue greets visitors. A boy. Clean snow collects atop his walnut cap. One of the child's eyes wears a cataract of ice. His rosy cheeks and red smile look happy. This evening, the painted figure silently welcomed 25 people, arriving in a whitening storm. The distinguished visitors creaked through a dusted iron gate and churned the snow on the stone path to the cottage door. Inside, 13 tables waited, candles dancing. Against old stone walls, the colossal shadows of these guests flickered and jerked like projections from old movies. A phonograph played Wagner, The Soaring Rings. Aromas sang from the kitchen, breads and spices and soups and sauces, truffle, citrus and sweets and roasting potatoes. Well, potatoes go with anything. The Epicureans have gathered. This is their night. This solstice, they chose a secret place in the forest near Baden-Württemberg. Next December 21st will be in Alabama, home to a solitary gentleman in a white Stetson and fringed white western jacket seated against a far wall. In 2 years, the group will gather secretly near Rio for tropical sun with their feast. Or maybe Buenos Aires. Votes on the next venue will be tallied at the end of the evening. Tonight, the gifted chef chosen to prepare this year's feast will weep in front of his 25 guests. His white toque blazed in firelight. The Epicureans will reassure him, pat his back and murmur, There, delicious, you've outdone yourself. It was a meal of a lifetime, 2 lifetimes. Indeed, the annual feast will be sensational. The best so far in a quarter-century of December meetings. After 24 courses and a fine dessert, the chef will roll out Persian plums, quince, pomegranates, and apricots. He will offer an exquisite rare coffee, an astronomically expensive French cheese board, and a 400-year-old grappa salvaged from a Roman wreck at the bottom of the Aegean. With their final toast, the Epicureans will watch as the chef is strangled to death before their eyes. He will eventually quit, his silly twitching, slump in his white apron to the floor, his face purple as crushed grapes. Secrets must stay secret. Outside, lacy snow gathers along the window mullions. For now, the Epicureans wait patiently at their places. A lion-headed English duke and his fiery rogue duchess, these from their famous old Albemarle estate, hold hands atop the Burano tablecloth. The duke comes from old British Empire tea trade money, Enough wealth to buy and sell Prince Charles and the boys. The Duchess, magnificent, bejeweled, once insanely beautiful, will never in her life be photographed alongside the Queen. This is the Queen's decision. Even in royal finery, Her Majesty appears most plain beside the Duchess. The photograph reveals the monarch as a commoner, Queen Betty. The next table seats equally remarkable guests. Industrialist from Nagasaki and his handsome partner light a private brand of opium-laced tobacco. They lift glistening 20-carat lighters to cigarettes rolled in papers of gold leaf. A sweet, heady smell lingers at their table. The elegant entwined fingers of both the Japanese businessmen bear permanent gold stains. One shows off a streak of gold dyed into his jet-black hair. The Japanese gentlemen have fasted 2 days preparing for the solstice feast. Imperially slim, they watch the kitchen door of the cottage the way hawks watch a field for baby rabbits. Out the windows, snow falls, hypnotic, fast as rain. The spear tips of the black iron fence turn white. A lone bare bulb burns over the cottage door, and the heavy flakes swarm crazily around it like midsummer moths. Tables, of course, must be served. A bald, blocky waiter, thick through the shoulders as an ox, moves quietly from couple to couple. His thin fingers, long and delicate, don't match his enormous body. The hands might belong to a young girl, a harpist. His name is Stefan, and he places antique Dresden plates and 400-year-old Colombian silverware on snow-white tablecloths. He carries the settings casually, like workman's tools, at the end of massive arms. His black tuxedo is the style with a split tail, the tail of a tern. Terns wear black and white, travel island to island. The second servant, Ronaldo, has very black skin and a white tuxedo. He serves the Epicureans a rare Rheims champagne, stopping at each table to display in white-gloved hands the faded labels of the last bottles known to the world. He deftly pours the chilled bubbly into ancient flutes, Venetian with 700 unbroken years of service. The Epicureans raise their toasts with this shell-thin glassware every year. 24 solstice feasts and counting. At the finale of every meal, through the uneven glass of the upraised stems, the Epicureans have seen. The huge bald waiter, Stefan, garret in hand, approaches the weeping chef from behind. He pauses to raise the chef's chin, just so, with one finger before a final, nearly tender embrace. The red-faced Duke and Duchess, the taciturn Japanese partners, the 10 other couples, plus the lone man from Alabama, all merrily sated, all impossibly wealthy, applaud the great chef's final act of service. Who are they? The Epicureans. The Duke and Duchess, of course. The men from Nagasaki. The other characters are as colorful. The 2 Danes started out stealing jewels. These lovely aging sisters from a wealthy shipping family in Copenhagen. They use connections through their father and rich uncles to meet fugitive Nazis in Argentina after the World War. The sisters were very beautiful then. They picked up the rings and earrings and necklaces off their male corpses, off the corpses of their families too, and emptied safes and bank accounts. From one of the victims, the sister learned of a hiding place, an alpine cave used by the Third Reich to store art pieces raided from French manses. That trove made the sisters shamelessly wealthy. They sold, they sell, one canvas or statue at a time to secretive buyers wanting to cap off a private collection with a missing masterpiece. The sisters have giggled naked as worms on antique rugs, with priapic clients above them and moving, circling in the radiance of a Rembrandt, the cool marble glow of a Praxiteles. Ronaldo quietly makes his rounds. Klaus de Abonnet now sparkles in the delicate flutes of the champagne bubbles spiraling upwards in the glass as fast as the snow swirls outside. A cuckoo clock, ornately carved from Bavarian silver fir, thrusts out its bird-shaped tongue and cries midnight. It's officially the solstice. The room catches its breath. Now it's time. On cue, far out in the storm, headlights appear. A vehicle moves miles from any road. Its beams bounce once or twice wildly among the inked-in branches of the deep woods. The vintage Mercedes makes its way down a long white path toward the cottage. The small African man rises from the table, leaves his swan-necked black bride, steps to the cottage window. The diminutive Tutsi rules a large sub-Saharan nation. The New York Times calls him a ruthless warlord. His wizen-face shows no emotion. A white ghost of vapor appears on the window pane beneath his broad nostrils, an unholy spirit. A taller man joins him. This sort of holiday meal is a tradition among you African people, isn't it, Mr. Okar? The jest, spoken in English with a French accent, turns the African's head. A wide smile reveals teeth filed to sharp points. You surely know, Mr. Okar answers the taunt with a perfect Oxford accent. Know what? That your comment is deeply racist, bigoted, and insensitive. My wife and I find this French humor most deeply offensive. That statement hangs in the air. Then Mr. Okar adds, Monsignor Granulet, Mr. Frog. A shriek of laughter, the Frenchman's included, shakes the room. Touché, cries the billionaire shipping magnate from Marseille. I shall give your black princess a string of black pearls as my act of contrition. Thus merriment rules. For 11 months a year, the Epicureans lie awake in the dark, eyes shining, dreaming of solstice night. They will not waste these few precious hours in quarrels. Headlights jounce once more into view. Twin pencils of illumination sketching snowy branches, dark evergreen trunks. The delivery grows closer to the cottage. A heavy log shifts. The fire in the huge stone hearth at one end of the cottage flares furiously, flings gold coins. Through a frosted kitchen window, the chef watches a white Mercedes approach through the snowstorm. He turns even more pale, if that were possible, under the dazzling spotlights of a lavishly appointed kitchen, the kitchen of a lifetime. Every surface gleams. Carefully customized Viking stove and counters of Carrara marble, burled maple cabinetry, rows of steel knives, a hanging rack of seasoned pots and pans, enough herbs for a botanical garden, spices heard of, read of, but never before used on a table of his. The chef tests a blade he sharpened against an ancient whetstone, a Sumerian relic. The knife flashes when he holds it up, and he catches his reflection in bright steel, the worried face, the little brown mustache, the eyes black, mortal, so afraid. A thought crosses the chef's mind. He will plunge the knife into his own thin chest now to avoid the horror of what he must do, what he must be a part of. The knife will slip in so quickly, a surprise to himself, to everyone. His heart will sob to a halt. He will die as innocently as any man who has lived 50 years working hard and caring for his craft with all his might. But then the chef thinks of little sweet Marie, of his brave boys, Jean-Louis and Ricard, his wife, Celeste. He knows what will become of them if he does not consummate this night. Create the perfect solstice feast. In that event, the Epicureans have made his family fate crystal clear. He has been chosen, his bad luck. He knew good luck most of his wonderful days. Now this. At least the rewards will flow to Celeste forever. She and the children will never want. The Epicureans have made that perfectly clear, too. If this kitchen delights, the Epicureans on this unique night, this night of nights, his family, when he is gone, will never know want. All is prepared. The chef constructed his kitchen for 6 days, secretly at unlimited expense. Oh, curious that he will cook just once here, just once more ever, one last meal. The feast of the solstice this single night. Oh, curious. And back in Paris, where he made his name, where he earned the Michelin stars, he lacked for nothing. It had nothing, even close to the extravagant culinary equipment in this small stone cottage on this black night in the secret place at the end of the world. Now, not even heavy snow can muffle the rumbling diesel of the approaching Mercedes. The African warlord has been joined at the window by the Arabs, 2 men and 2 stunning women, unveiled, modern, oil billionaires, royal family. Other tables empty too. Eager faces crowd the glass, patrons welcoming their special guests. Shanghai realtor and his tiny bride. The stunning fashionista from Milan and her scandalous bad boy Spanish soccer star. The Jews from Tel Aviv and the jewelry they designed. Bearish Russian arms merchant and his sultry, red-lipped Ukrainian call girl. A low chatter runs among the Epicureans, a kind of voltage. Just one remains seated. Next year's host, the man from the American South, the Alabamian, supports his jowly bald head on his thick fists and stares without blinking at the door. His country western jacket is white as the snow. The man's looming head and cowboy hat seem somehow even larger by candlelight. His eyes wear hoods. His mouth takes up much of his face. As he waits, two thick fingers lightly tap heavy lips. Another place, another night. Somewhere warm with crackling music from an old radio. He might be blowing kisses. Voices pierce the storm. German, one higher, childlike. The whomp of a car door quiets them. The Epicureans jostle to see. Now here are our gifts, breathes one of the Arab women. Diamonds, brilliant as Venus on a summer night, glitter in her ears. Voices near. Cold hands fumble with a heavy iron latch. Coleman, coming in. An Epicurean near the door, and the white-curled Russian in his heavy black coat thrusts an arm out like a policeman. The gorgeous high-heeled escort of the Frenchman from Marseille falls back. She's annoyed, her thick blonde hair a little wild, her lips tight. She has no time to curse. The heavy cottage door swings open wide. Shards of ice tumble from its corners. Through the opening gusts a big, bluff German in a heavy coat. Dieter Felty is the Epicurean host of this year's feast. He's picked this year's private venue. He selected the chef. He set up the kitchen. He made all the arrangements. Dieter's ice blue eyes water with cold, but his smile beams. Gute Nacht, gute Nacht. Good to see you, my friends. So good. Sorry about the weather. I prayed for better, but no one listened. Dieter, Dieter, they answered, delighted. The German unbuttons his long black overcoat and snow avalanches down from his shoulders. His hands grip something curious, a length of rope. It stretches through the door behind him onto the snowy yard. Welcome to my Germany, Dieter exclaims, stamping his feet to shake off more snow. And now, an introduction. Oh, he jerks the rope and pulls something into the room. Two children, noosed at the neck like geese, stumble over the threshold. Snow swirls in around them, stinging cold as North Sea spray. Our boy is no more than 6. The girl can't be older than 4. They are completely naked, except for the gags of bright yellow silk. They tremble violently, stare with terrified eyes. Here, my friends, welcome our Hansel and Gretel. Ah, the The Epicureans sigh. The Duchess reaches out red-nailed fingers, takes the bare flesh of the little girl's upper arm. She gives a sharp pinch. Very nice work, Dieter. She hisses to the German host, ghastly mouth smiling. This feast will be most special. The little boy manages to yell out in terror around his yellow scarf. Hilfe, Hilfe, Mama, ich habe Angst. Oh, Dieter's big jolly hand smothers the cry, and this year's Epicurean host lifts the boy and his sisters, carries them upside down, heads nearly bumping the stone floor away to the kitchen. The chef furtively falls to his knees in front of the hot steel stove. He prays the most furious prayer of his life. He hears them. He senses them. The Epicureans enter the kitchen. The chef rises, wipes his knees. The knives are very sharp. They will not hurt the children. Not much. God, please forgive me. Please save my black, damned soul. Chapter 2. Lafayette. Elmore Rogers stared in disbelief. Was any shock worse than a thumb brutally clubbed with a hammer? Freezing weather on a steeply pitched roof on a Friday, 1 hour before quitting time. 2 days before Christmas. Funny, it didn't hurt yet. Bloody mess at the end of Elmore's left hand made his heart hammer. He closed his eyes and exhaled into the cold afternoon. White vapor gusted away like a soul. Blood suddenly welled fast from the top and the bottom of Elmore's thumbnail. Bright red drops splattered the sticky black tar paper under Elmore's work boots. Jesus! Elmore squeezed the bludgeoned thumb, held it tight against his belly like a caught little bird. Stinging tears rose. Roofing techs, they spilled from his carpenter's apron, wobbled drunkenly down the tar paper to the roof edge. They fell 3 stories. Streaks of blood chased them. Now, here it came. Mr. Payne. Oh, Jesus, now it hurt. A hiss like frying bacon rose in Elmore's ears. His thumb pulsed lightning. Who knew this hurt might last all the rest of his life? Well, some hurts did. You, slacker, up there! A bull-necked man far below on the ground glared fiercely up at Elmore. His square shoulder fell before him over a sand pile, a mortar mixer, a puddle of rainwater. The man wore a white hat. His heavy white fringed jacket made him look something like a football player in shoulder pads. He clamped a short cigar. The man's head was enormous, disproportionate, the head of a pit bull, too big for the body. "Plum, over here. What's that slacker's name up on the gable?" "That's Elmore Rogers, Mr. Wood." He stopped working, sucking his thumb. "Did you yell quitting time?" Mr. Plum, the construction foreman, appeared meek, cowed. "Elmore does real good work for us up in the high places, Mr. Wood." "Good work? The hell!" Mr. Wood's angry voice flew to the roof. Elmore somehow heard the shouts in a throbbing thumb. "Rogers, house ain't gonna build itself. You want to leave here the afternoon with a check? You get a move on." Mr. Wood rarely appeared at a job site, even for the construction of his own vast mansion. Today, though, he had shown up in person. He ostensibly carried a 2-inch thick stack of pay envelopes, a holiday red bound with a fat green rubber band. He'd come to play Santa Claus 2 afternoons before Christmas. Just back from Europe, somebody told Elmore at lunch break, between chews of potted meat, that booger went over there just to eat at some fancy restaurant. What do you reckon they eat in Europe anyway? Snails and shit. Mr. Wood was Mr. Big Shot. Elmore Rogers didn't care for people like that. Mr. Wood could have been satisfied with being a tycoon and flying around in a fancy jet. But now he decided to flaunt his fortune and build a castle. That's when people called the rising mansion Wood Castle. Richest man in the whole South, folks said. Tightest man in the whole world, another construction worker had grumbled to Elmore that very morning as they monkeyed up a scaffold onto the icy roof. Squeaks when he walks. Elmore rocked unconsciously in pain, thumb clutched to his body. "House ain't gonna build itself. Well, Mr. Big Shot, at least I'm up here in the freezing cold earning a paycheck. I never stepped on somebody else's head to get where I am." Elmore's spite boiled over. He hated that pretentious white hat and leather coat, all that silly fringe. A coat with fringe. What was that, Fat Elvis meets Daniel Boone? With winter wind and bleeding wound and a violently runny nose, Elmore should have raised from a straddle the house gable to yell something defiant. But he did. A black mouth gaped before Elmore's eyes. A monster mouth. Midnight on hinges. It opened to swallow him whole. Elmore had battled a problem all his life. Something about seeing blood leave his own body had left him helpless, shaky. The midnight mouth laughed wickedly. Elmore teetered. He struggled not to tumble down its black maw. "Hey, you down there!" Elmore yelled, his fighting vertigo. "Hey, Mr. Big!" Oh, his legs wobbled. He turned to Gumby. The roof rushed up. Tar paper, blacker and blacker. Elmer's face banged. He rolled down the roof through spiraled roofing tacks. Elmore fell. Silver rainfall of nails showered after him. Elmore's cloth nail apron had snagged on an eave and ripped away. It dangled like a bloody flag in the Christmas wind. The broken fall might have killed another man. It didn't kill Elmore Rogers, but he did briefly wish he'd died. Not for the first time. Elmore again felt an explosion, fire and flame, desert sun, a white hand reaching down from a blue sky, his old friend, Dan Neely, a violent sun flaring over his helmet. Iraq. But now this winter day in Alabama, Elmore stared up grimly from flat on his back. He blinked at the gray afternoon. Stars out early. They burst among migrating blackbirds and dirty nimbus clouds. Would he ever breathe again? Would he? Elmore beheld a vision. Two beautiful kids, Mary and Will, his twins, his reasons to live. Elmore took a deep, magnificent gasp of air. His ribs nearly killed him, but Elmore breathed. He would choose pain if he had nothing else to feel. Shouts rose, the heavy, scary sounds of grown men running. Grown men only run when something bad happens. He somehow rolled onto his stunned left side, but then flopped back again. So many things hurt. He closed his eyes. Safe. Safe in there. Two black brick masons, Dawsey and Oscar, stood over him. Oscar held a dripping, galvanized bucket. Elmore felt numb, but vividly awake. Magically, Mr. Wood reappeared. As the blocky figure stalked up, gusting wind cocked his Stetson at a silly angle. Mr. Wood pushed his head into the open window of a pickup. The boss fixed a scalding eye on Plum, the rabbit-faced foreman, who shrank back of the wheel. Looks like they might be starting the holidays a little early here, Plum. Sir? I said, Mr. Wood hollered, that when your crew is so drunk they're falling off the roof at 4 p.m, you got a quality control problem. Think you got a quality control problem, Mr. Plum? All 50 or so construction workers looked on, some high on the roof, others from unfinished house windows, still more at jobs far out in the lot. They would later talk about how mild Mr. Plum, a church-going National Guardsman, rarely raised his voice, showed Mr. Wood a little backbone. Elmore Rogers ain't drunk, sir. He can't drink a lick. He's got his insides messed up in Iraq. His liver don't tolerate. You don't contradict me, yelled Mr. Wood. I just saw a drunk fall off a roof. Mr. Wood's wide face had blackened. His strange, shark eyes did not blink. Plum, Mr. Wood blustered. You got this Elway or whatever the hell his name is off this job. His Christmas check pays for the emergency room, and tell him not to bother showing back up here Monday or any other day. I don't hire drunkards. A few of the construction workers stared sheepishly down at their work boots. Dawsey and Oscar gingerly rolled Elmore onto a sheet of plywood. They lifted it like a stretcher into the bed of Plum's pickup. If you ran the lights, it was a 10-minute drive to the emergency room at Lafayette General. The two black men crouched silently on either side of Elmore. Plum wheeled the Dodge away fast, bouncing it over the plowed rows of an old field. The truck's bumper snagged a nest of rusted barbed wire and noisily dragged it. In the flatbed, Elmore rattled like an epileptic. "Yeah, giddy up." Elmore watched Mr. Wood wave his white hat in the air, receding, his voice fading. "Get that drunk the hell out of here." Dozens of workers, black and white and brown, all male, all grim, stared on. They watched from the unfinished skeleton of the vast 100,000 square foot antebellum-styled main house, from the sides and roof of the gigantic carriage house in a huge garage rising behind the main structure. Even more men watched. Wood Castle. Mr. Wood's new residence would be the largest private home built in Alabama state history. It would dwarf Biltmore Mansion in North Carolina. It would cost more than Sam Simeon in California. "Listen up," yelled Mr. Wood. "Clown show's over. Clown show's over." An eerie echo it rang back from the soaring surfaces of Mr. Wood's future home. "Drunk's on his way to get pumped out. Now get back to work. You'll hear from me when it's quitting time. Hop to it." The crews hopped to it. A shrill of skill saws and gunshot tattoos of air guns and staccato blows of framing hammers drowned out any other commands Mr. Wood might have shouted. 1 hour to Christmas break. A working man could endure anything for an hour. Minutes later, like a movie miracle, snow began to descend from fleecy gray clouds over Alabama. Flat on his back, in the cruelly bouncing bed of Mr. Plum's pickup, Elmore Rogers stared up without blinking. The sky was gray cotton with a flashlight behind it where a puny sun burned. Elmore tasted blood. He licked his tongue and found a broken tooth and a red crumb of Anglian rustic brick. What were his two young guns going to think about their daddy now? What kind of snaggletooth, busted-up, flat-broke Santa Claus is Elmore Rogers going to be for Christmas? The truck slowed at the intersection in downtown Lafayette. Light snow blessed Elmore's bruised face as he heard or imagined the ringing of Salvation Army bells. Cool white flakes, soft as bandages, soft as angel feathers, settled over his bloody clothes. "I love you, Will and Mary," Elmore whispered to himself. "I'll give you a Merry Christmas, even like this."